Also, I gave you general information about central nervous system. So as we said, it divides into CNS, central nervous system, and another one is known as PNS, peripheral nervous system. And about their parts, we also talked. In here, you can see major organs of our central nervous system. Now we are going to talk about reflex arc. I will give you information about reflex. Firstly, let's talk about the reflex. Reflex. Reflex is a general name of giving response. It is actually involuntary. So it is involuntary action. Involuntary action. Guys, involuntary in here means you cannot control. You can't control this one. So let's say that when you are touching the hot object, as involuntary action, because of the reflex, you are taking off your finger from that object immediately, you know. It is needed, of course, for the protection. It is involuntary action, or we are saying that it is unconscious action. Reflexes are moving by the reflex arc. So the pathway of reflex, it's known as reflex arc. So now we will talk about order, the organs or the body parts which are participating in reflex action. It contains 5 parts. It contains 5 parts. These 5 parts are, firstly, you are receiving the signal, firstly by receptor. So firstly, we have receptor, which is receiving the stimuli. Then they are sending to the brain. They are sending to the brain by sensory neurons. So this is one type of the neuron. So let's write it, then I will explain these types of the neurons. So second one is a sensory neuron. Sensory neuron takes it from receptor to the brain or spinal cord. What we say, CNS, central nervous system. Your central nervous system, example, produces like answer, analyzes the signal, and they are saying that, an example, it is harmful, so we need to take the finger. So they are sending answer by another neuron, what we call as motor neuron. And motor neuron give this answer, let's say, to an effector organ. By effector organ, we give response. So these are 5 parts of reflex action.
Mr. Purvis, can you please again the function of third and fourth one?
Of course, I will explain. CNS, central nervous system, it is related with the answer, an example, which answer I will create. So they are analyzing the information. They analyze the information. So which response I need to create. An example, if, let's say, I'm repeating again, if my sound is not dangerous for you, your brain is not producing response. So information goes to your brain, and brain says that this volume, let's say, is not dangerous, so no need to give response. But if you hear an example, loud noise, in this case, your CNS will create response. An example, close your ears. In this case, answer through motor neuron will be given to an effector, and effector will produce response. So let's talk about these 2 neurons, their functions. So actually, if we talk about types of neurons, we have 3 types of neurons. These 3 types of neurons are sensory neuron, sensory neuron. We have motor neuron and relay neuron. Relay neuron. Generally, in United States, we are calling it as interneuron. Let's begin with sensory neuron. Guys, sensory neuron's function is to receive impulse from receptor and send it to the CNS, brain or spinal cord. So what do you think, guys? What will happen if we will damage our sensory neuron?
We're not able to give response.
No, not giving response. Yes, it will be related with the feeling, guys. Response is not related with the sensory neuron. So when we have damage in the sensory neuron, you will not feel the stimuli, such as you will not feel the pain, you will not see, you will be deaf, an example, blind.
Okay.
Yes, this is related with the sensory neuron. Or another one also, if we will have damage in receptors, we will have the same problems also. Motor neuron makes opposite action. So they carry impulses or answers from CNS to an effector. If you will have damage in motor neuron, you will feel the pain, but you will not give response.
It's the worst.
It's worst. You know Stephen Hawking?
No.
In Stephen Hawking, guys, as I remember, only 30% of motor neurons worked. Another 70% destroyed by the special case disease. The name of disease, if you remember, was ALS. There was, you know, ice bucket challenge about it. So if you will have problem with the motor neuron, you will not give response. Let's say that someone cuts your finger, let's say, you are feeling it in your brain, but you can't shout, you can't cry, you can't take your finger away. If you remember, for the Stephen Hawking, he couldn't speak, an example. Because for speaking, I need my motor neuron, because my motor neurons carry answer. An example, I'm speaking what to say. Then this information, like this impulses by motor neuron, goes to my, an example, jaw muscles, my tongue, or let's say that diaphragm, and I'm using this air and movements for the speaking. So without motor neurons, okay, you are thinking to speak, but this is not going to the needed organs.
That's why some people are like cannot speak. Or
Yes, of course. Yes, one of the reasons, let's say. Let's talk about the relay neurons.
Mr.
Yes.
Perviz,
Yes, Sabina.
does paralysis also happen because of the motor neuron?
It is depending. Yes, of course. It's also related with the, not only the reason, okay? Paralysis is related with many things. And one of them is, of course, damage of motor neuron. And sensory neuron, yes, Malek is asking about the sensory neurons. So when there is a damage in sensory neuron, Malek, you will not feel the stimuli. You will not feel the stimuli. So you will not feel pain or no vision, no hearing. And third one, guys, relay neuron. Relay neuron, firstly, it is located only in the brain or CNS. So it's located only in the CNS. And its function is to receive impulse from sensory neuron and give it to motor neuron. So sensory neuron gives response, impulse, gives impulse to relay neuron. Relay neuron thinks what to answer. And this answer is given to motor neuron to effector, and effector gives response. So it's a relay neuron, it's a bridge, let's say, between sensory and motor neuron. Now we will also talk Of course, Rashid, if we will damage our central nervous system, it means that you will not feel and you will not give response, you know. Both of them will be damaged. Because all the processing related with the brain is processing, an example, how to feel. Guys, all your feelings are related with brain, okay? So we generally say that it's coming from the heart, your heart is feeling, but in biology, of course, it's not related. All the feelings center is related with the brain. And you know, in the brain, we have certain regions. You have center of speech, you have center of hearing, or sound, or vision, touch.
Great.
Yes, of course. So now I will draw the 3 types of the neurons, guys. Yeah. So firstly, let's draw sensory neuron. Guys, sensory neuron, we are drawing like this one. They have unusual shape, like structure. If it's not a problem, what are the last 2 reflex arc? So last 2 parts, Maksud, the last 2 parts of the reflex arc are motor neuron, and an effector. So guys, this is sensory neuron. These are dendrites. These are dendrites. And this is an axon, let's see. If impulse is going by this way, of course, guys, don't forget, you need to find according to the arrow, okay? So in this area, in this part, we will have receptor organ because they receive from receptor and they send it to an axon, and axon will send it to CNS, central nervous system. So they are receiving from receptor the impulse, and this impulse passes dendrite, cell body, axon, and through the axon they are sending it to the CNS. Now I will draw motor neuron. Actually, motor neuron is a typical neuron. What we generally draw when we talk about the neuron, it is motor neuron, like this one. So motor neuron receives, so these are again dendrites, they are receiving impulse from CNS, and send it to an effector organ, as we said, such as muscle or gland. So if the movement will be from dendrite to an axon, like this one. And third one is a motor relay neuron. For the relay neuron, in our book, we have this type of projection. Like, let's say that their axons are short. So they receive and send. In this case, in this part, we will have sensory neuron. This is sensory neuron. And in here, we will have motor neuron. So they receive from sensory and send it to the motor neuron. So finally, if we will talk about, again, the parts of the reflex action. So reflex works by this way, guys. Firstly, from outside, we need to have stimuli.
Mr. Parvis, can you please show the pictures of neurons again so I can write?
Yes, of course. But please be quick because I'm also recording the lesson, so you can use.
Okay, I took a picture. I will write one picture.
Okay. So stimuli, as we said, received by receptor. Then from receptor, it goes to sensory neuron. Then CNS. In the CNS, as we said, we have also relay neuron. Then motor neuron, effector, and effector will create response. So response and stimuli. And let's go through the picture about it. So in this picture, you can see an example of reflex action. So firstly, we have pain receptor. Let's say, look guys, the hand touches a hot plate. So this hot object or hot temperature change detected by the thermoreceptors or by the pain receptors, then this is traveling by the sensory neuron, as you see, which takes it to the spinal cord. It's a part of the CNS. Then spinal cord creates a response, and this response moves by the motor neuron, to an effector, which is in this case biceps muscle. It's a muscle, and muscle makes a response by taking hand away from the hot plate. So guys, let's stop in.
Why,
Yes.
but why it travels, but we only feel it on our hand, but not on the arm?
Because again, response is very fast. Yes, it is immediate response. And as I said, you firstly, again, guys, you feel it by the brain. And receptors, where we have these receptors? We have these receptors in this part of our hand. Of course, you will feel this pain in here, not in the muscle.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.